So the cat was finally in the bag. The ad hoc parliamentary committee took everybody to prison, where many of them should stay in Pretoria, and Lord Kat Matlala decided to give them an audience to actually appear before the parliamentary committee. The parents of those parliamentarians must have been so proud that they got a convicted criminal to finally speak to the parliamentary committee meeting. Welcome to the Political Insider. I want you to just pause for a second, because we know that there's many people that watch this that should be subscribed that haven't subscribed. So please, if you haven't done it yet, let's do it. Let's go through what happened yesterday. Obviously, the day was dominated by the testimony of Kat Matlala. Now, he came out to meet the committee dressed a bit like Kim Kardashian, decked out from head to toe in Burberry, because nothing says I'm a criminal more than being dressed in the finest Burberry shoes. You could have been excused for thinking that this inquiry was going to be done by the team from Top Billing. Instead, we had a few parliamentarians. And to be fair, the only parliamentarian that tried to raise his game to the standard of Matlala was Julius Malema, who came out there in his designer suits. But as for the rest of them, they could have made a better effort. The MK MPs came out there in their camo bush jackets that they got from Ackermans, and the DA MPs were there in their finest K-way. Come on, guys. You're there with a classy criminal. The best you can do is K-way jackets and camo jackets. Come on. Right, I'm sure you've got those pointy shoes somewhere in the back of your cupboard. Right, so Mr. Matlala, who decided not to speak to the committee before and then say, I may not, eventually did it. And he, contrary to what he had said, where he said he wasn't prepared, well, he seemed to be quite well prepared. His lawyer was on hand, and he gave some pretty short answers, and he managed to really sort of seem like he'd done this before, which I think he has. Now, the evidence leader, because a lot of what we heard yesterday was from the evidence leaders, and the main evidence leader, Neville Arendse, looked genuinely starstruck. He looked more impressed speaking to Kat Matlala than what he did when he was speaking to some of the, ministers. So he really seemed so starstruck that he really didn't press Matlala hard on anything. And a lot of the stuff that came out is going to have to be left to the members of parliament to push a little bit harder. Now, we've got to remember, because it seemed to be lost on some of the people in the room and some of the commentary, that this is a guy, Kat Matlala, who's in jail because he tried to kill his girlfriend while his wife was at home with their 9 children. This was a guy who was involved in the looting of Tembisa Hospital. This was a guy who, by all accounts, allegedly arranged the assassination of Babita Diakaran. This is a guy who's been charged and had 18 cases withdrawn from the police service. Now, either the police were really bad in catching him for those 18 cases, or he's got some seriously well-connected friends that every single time he's been charged over a period of more than 20 years, the cases get withdrawn. Not that he wins the cases, or they get withdrawn. I mean, really. He was once caught for something minor, but the point is, this is a bad guy. He runs a big business in crime. He's no celebrity. He might be wearing Burberry, but this isn't a guy who's out here to make South Africa a better place. Sometimes it seemed, with the banter and the friendly relations and indulging his every need. I mean, let's start here. When the morning started, Matlala said, we will finish at 5 p.m. So they finished at 5 p.m. This guy, he's a prisoner, right? Okay, anyway. We spent enough time talking about this yesterday. So, he told us he went into detail about this lease that he's got on police property, which was given to him by the Department of Public Works, which brings another department into the question, into the frame. because there's two issues here. There's a SAPS tender for medical testing of policemen, so nothing quite like getting the head of a criminal syndicate to be in charge of medically testing your police. I hope nobody from another country is listening to this. This is rather embarrassing. But one of the most hardened criminals in the country was in charge of testing police's well-being. On top of that, he had leased property from the police, but the property is managed by the Department of Public Works. So I know there's been a lot of finger-pointing at the police service as in how they could give a tender to Kat Matlala, but let's also start remembering that we need some questions answered from the Department of Public Works. This property that he was leasing includes a clinic that he was desperate to get his hands on so that he could run his medical business. When you got politicians on the string, you might as well just take everything that makes money. We've seen that from other criminal syndicates that even run school feeding schemes, hospital feeding schemes. You just make money wherever you can make money. You get a hospital to buy skinny jeans. Remember that, right? So, you just go for your badge. And these criminals are fairly shameless, and everybody seemed to be forgetting that. Anyway, let's talk about more of his testimony. He denied having any personal or improper relationship with Shadrach Sabia. He denied ever giving him money, despite saying the exact opposite. In a recorded statement after Kat Matlala was arrested, he blurted out all of his problems. He said how much money he's given to Shadrach Sabia, how he paid for his son's wedding, how he did all sorts of payments. Now he's saying, I barely know the guy and I gave him nothing. So either he was lying then or he's lying now. But he wasn't under oath there. This time he is under oath. So we'll have to see where that leads to. There was the story about when the political killings task team finally got him and arrested him. He laid a charge against those policemen that arrested him for assault, saying that they manhandled him, that they scared his children, and that they stole his stuff when he was arrested. Right? None of this there doesn't seem to be much proof of this, but he stuck to the story. And this so offended him that he realized that he could be in the middle of a power struggle within the political side of it between Senzo Mchunu and Bheki Cele, who are fighting over control of the police. Now, I'm not 100% sure why Mchunu and Cele should be fighting over the police service, because the way I remember, Mchunu was in a completely different ministry. I think he was in the Ministry of Water Affairs until last election, and Bheki Cele was Minister of Police, and then the one replaced the other. There was no overlap. The one wasn't the deputy of the other. So I can't understand why there's two centers of power. In other words, the day that they said to Bheki Cele, please go off to the great hat shop in the sky, go and retire, Senzo Mchunu came over there. I presume what he's saying is that Bheki Cele, who had a long association with the police, remember he was Jacob Zuma's original police commissioner way back in 2009. And then he became police minister, because nothing cleans up corruption like putting somebody who had been bust for corruption in charge of the police. But hey, that's Cyril Ramaphosa's decision. It seems like Bheki Cele still has enormous sway over the police service, and his name came up a lot yesterday. So he had these two guys fighting, and he had kind of a little bit of access to both, but he had very close access to Bheki Cele, because in Bheki Cele's own telling, he was a pensioner, retired. So maybe he had a lot of time on his hands, and he just had a few phone numbers saved in his phone. But he had complained to Bheki Cele about Brown Makhotsi, who was harassing him for money. Now on this, we watched Brown Makhotsi's testimony at the Madlanga Commission. We saw what kind of guy he is. And even I would, even a hardened criminal can't take much of that. And Brown Makhotsi was all over him for money. And eventually, he did give Makhotsi some money for accommodation and flights for that great crime expo, which we also known as the ANC's January 8th celebrations, which they held in Cape Town, because nothing says we hate other parties run cities like always having your parties in Cape Town. But he paid for that, and then he stopped communicating with Brian Mokgotsi. So this is contrary to what Brian Mokgotsi has to say, so somebody's lying under oath. Anyway, that sets Brian Mokgotsi aside. Then he said that him and Becky Taylor were really close, and they made a deal. Because Kat Matlala had a problem, and that was when he was arrested, his firearms were taken. And he went to Becky Taylor and said, I want my guns back. So Becky Taylor, for a fee, managed to arrange that his firearms could be collected from the police station in Pretoria, which he did, and his firearms were returned to him. He claims that he made 2 payments to Becky Taylor. One of 300,000 Rand in Cape Town, if I'm not mistaken, and 200,000 in Durban. Right now, this will shock nobody, because Becky Taylor, we know, has got some questionable morals, and we know that he even admitted that he likes to consort with criminals. So nothing to see here. But it is quite crazy to have a senior politician being mentioned here as a person getting money from a criminal syndicate. And remember that in the original testimony by Madlanga Commission that started that got all of this going, he said that he knew that Becky Taylor had received money and then retracted it later on in a sworn affidavit to the Madlanga Commission. So now there's another question here of, when was Madlanga Commission telling the truth? When he said that Becky Taylor got money, or when he said that Becky Taylor didn't get money? It's hard to follow. But in addition to his revelations with Becky Taylor, he said that he did arrange a meeting between Kat Matlala and Madlanga Commission. And according to Mkhwanazi, this meeting was set up because, according to Matlala, he needed this meeting because he wanted Matlala to give him some information on Shadrach Sibiya that Mkhwanazi's been desperate to see behind bars. Apparently, the meeting included some threats to say, I can give you information, but you've got to get Fani Masemola, the police commissioner, to behave himself because he keeps on wanting to stop my 360 million Rand contract. Mkhwanazi said, don't kill him or I'll kill you. It's low-level mob stuff. But the point is that it seemed like finally, the police commissioner, after years of doing nothing, perhaps was questioning this tender. He was talking about stopping the tender. And Kat Matlala wanted Masemola out of the way. I don't know if I was a criminal, I might want Masemola exactly where he is. If one looks at the crime rate, this is hardly Batman. The guy isn't really fighting crime the way we would expect a police commissioner to fight crime. He questioned one tender. That seems to be the sum total of his actual police, of him performing his duties at all. Criminals seem to act with impunity. We've seen Maumela's Lamborghinis. We've seen Katie Malefe. We've seen all of this going on while the murder rate spirals up. And if I was a criminal, I'd want to keep Masemola exactly where I am. The last thing we need, if I was a criminal, is a police commissioner even does a little bit of work. And as to whether he was going to get killed or not, if you've got somebody who's so bad at his job like Masemola, I'm sure he must be one of the safest people in the country. But anyway, that's what came out of this ramble of Kat Matlala the whole day, where he seemed to contradict many of the things he said before. He's contradicted what a lot of other people have testified, and it's going to be very difficult to unscramble this egg once this is finally done. Will the guy stay in jail? Who knows? He's going to have some fairly expensive lawyers, and the state's going to have some fairly bad prosecutors, and I don't think there's the political will to actually get this guy to stay in jail. We'll have to see. Then remember, there was the other commission, Ramaphosa's commission, the Madlanga Commission. who were meant to hear from KwaZulu-Natal Hawkshead, Lesetja Sonona, who's alleged to also have close ties with Matlala. But in what is becoming a common theme throughout these commissions, Sonona decided he's got better things to do, and his lawyers objected to some of the documents provided by the commission. So he's chosen not to appear in front of the Madlanga Commission, to which Justice Madlanga immediately, enraged, said, okay, and said, that's fine. When you feel like it, how does, you take out your calendar, does the 27th of January work for you? So now hopefully Sonona, the Hawk's Head in KZN, who's meant to have some very interesting personal relations, might be at the Madlanga Commission at the end of January. The disdain is crazy. It is crazy how our criminals and criminal syndicates and everybody involved treat these commissions like a plaything. And if we really want to get something done, we've got to get a little bit harder on this. And if anyone's going to reach their time deadlines, they better move soon. I want to just switch tack as we head to the close, and that is that I want to recognize one thing, and I want you to recognize this as well, that the ANC part of our government of national unity, in some cases, not all the cases, in some cases, please let's get this straight, is actually trying a new tactic. And we must recognize this because we don't want to get caught offside. They're trying a way new tactic, the ANC part of the government, and that is to govern slightly worse than before, slightly less worse than before, maybe even slightly better than before, right? And we've got to understand that that is because it's finally dawned on them that they actually need to govern better if they want to retain the support they got and potentially grow. The Department of Mineral Resources, headed by Uncle Gwidi Mantashe, has fought for years against having a national mining cadastral system. What is a cadastral system? It's a public database that is transparent, that tells everybody who owns mining rights and where, and what is available for exploration. Now, in a country with minerals, this is crucial if you want to attract investment, right? Countries that we would think are backwaters are running cadastral systems. Zambia, Zimbabwe, you name it. If there's mining activity, this is the only way you're going to get international investment. Now, why is ours such a mess? Well, for starters, we wouldn't go and get the international one that's been built already. We decided to build a version of ourselves. But sometimes it suits people with the nefarious ideas to have systems that don't work. Because while it's a mess, some office in Pretoria gets to decide who gets mineral rights. And this system has been used against the free movement of capital within the mining exploration arena, which is vital for a country like South Africa. Guys, South Africa is busy missing out on a massive minerals boom at the moment. We should be making a lot more money than we are. So finally, this thing is going to come out. There's been a rollout in the Western Cape, which seems to be quite successful. Don't know, there is some mining in the Western Cape. And it's going to be rolled out by province nationwide by the end of next year. This is South Africa. We must understand that nothing happens with the kind of Swiss efficiency that SARS operates with. That's the only place where we've got efficiency, where they take your money. But the point is that at least it started. It's going to streamline the process, and people will be able to search online, pay online, maybe even get permits at some point, right? And it'll replace this current pin the tail on the donkey system where I'll tell you later whether you hit the mark or not. Maybe I'll give you permission, maybe I won't, and then all their mates get the permission. So let's hope that this is a sign that some parts of government are getting it, that they need to do some things better because we're starting to see some movement in the country. That's all we've seen. That's all we got for you today. We will keep a close eye on Kat Matlala and his testimony, and we'll be back with more news tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me today.